We have breaking news, cue noise. Okay, so we had reported on Monday in our live gossip session about Sophie Lark's Sparrow and Vine series being pulled from the publisher. Now, when we had reported on that on Monday, we were under the impression that the series is being pulled, it's, rewrites are going to happen, and then it was going to be republished. However, the New York Times is reporting on it as of yesterday, so that would have been Wednesday the 5th, that it is being pulled completely from the publisher. So I will include links to the New York Times in there, and also the writer Alexandra Alter, who reported on this for the Times. So long story short, this is being pulled completely from Bloom. That was the statement made by Bloom's representative, is that it's going to be completely pulled. I also want to mention in the video that was done on Monday, I also had someone comment on YouTube mentioning Brooke Barnett, wanted to get the name right, that it is still available on NetGalley, like information-wise. So it's clear that it was archived. However, you can't request it as a galley. If you want to get more reader feedback, also head on over to Goodreads, because it is clear that information is on Goodreads. People are sharing their thoughts and their feelings. So you can always hop over there as well. But again, I found it very interesting. We three found it interesting when the New York Times decided that, hey, they are going to write an article on it. So Francesca, I mean, how are you feeling that the Times decided to, one, pick up? We talked about it. Okay, we talked about it on the channel first. But now the New York Times has mentioned about it. What is your take on the Sophie Lark of it all?
Yeah, first of all, I'm kind of surprised that the New York Times was talking about it. I feel like in the past few years, they've definitely started to pick up more on stories that especially center on the romance genre, because that's not something they used to do. So I was glad to see that in terms of like the coverage for the genre. But, obviously this is bad coverage in the sense that it's bad press, if you will. But in terms of the series being canceled completely by the publisher, I feel like I understand where they're coming from, because like they just don't want to deal with the drama. They've been very hands off in this whole process, which I don't think was the right approach for them. Like they've just basically said, well, we had nothing to do with it, basically. But you did, because there was an editorial process, like there was edits and stuff like that should have happened, I would think, at least. So it doesn't make them look good. They just chose the easy way out. But also, I think that Sophie Lark is a big enough name. She can self-publish it. She can edit as much or as little as she wants. She can self-publish it, and she'll still be okay.
Yep, I definitely agree. Laura, what is your take on Sophie Lark, but also the fact that the New York Times is covering this?
So the New York Times I read the article, and it compared this issue about early criticism for early readers, for advanced readers copy. And it brought out to the fact that Elizabeth Gilbert a couple of years ago was about to write a book about Russia, and it was early in the Russian-Ukraine war, and a lot of readers brought up how tone deaf it was and all the specifics, and how the publisher pulled, and she had to cancel that book altogether. So they're comparing it the same thing, but it's not the same, because Sophie Lark is an independent author who has built her career basically self-publishing, so she understands the KDP world, and so it's not the same. It's not like she's scrapping the story all together. The story would likely come back in a few years. As she stated, she's going to work with sensitivity readers, she's going to work on her issues, and then she's going to probably republish the story or republish a new story. So it's not fully canceled as the New York Times try to make it seem. It's just not. It's just going to come back. She might take a break from social media, as we've seen the playbook before, and then come back in a few years. But then again, the internet has receipts, and if people are going to look for, is Sophie Lark problematic, this stuff, the internet will show up. She might try to scrape it out of it, but she won't be able to. Like, there's a New York Times article about her.
Yeah. I find this whole thing interesting. So if you are just hearing about the Sophie Lark situation, let me just say it that way. Or yes, I like Sophie Lark problematic. So let me say that. If you are just hearing about the Sophie Lark controversy and you're curious about why she's problematic, We did a whole separate video on Monday because we have a live gossip session. We talked about it over there. But as it relates to the New York Times, I find it very interesting that they have decided to cover this. Yes, they're keeping their eye and their finger on the pulse of what is happening in the online book community, because they realize, you know what we say, how we feel, it has effects. And of course, it has consequences. I think Sophie Lark will be okay. The big question is, will she self-publish, which she is very familiar with that landscape, or will she try to shop it somewhere else? I also want to bring attention to the publisher, because I feel like the publisher has been completely hands-off in this situation. I almost feel like they've put the author out to dry. And I'm just trying to look at it from another side. I mean, do I think she was hella wrong for that? Absolutely. If the publisher had pointed this out to her, like they said, or like she said, rather. So if the publisher pointed it out like she said, but they were still going along with it, even though she said no, I think they should be saying something. So Bloom Books, you need to put out a statement. You need to explain why you allowed one of your authors to do it. I mean, again, was she wrong? Absolutely. I'm not taking up for her in any way, shape, or form, but I do think it is wrong that she's the only person taking blame. They're just saying, hey, we are pulling the series. We will not be publishing it. So it's going to be interesting to see if she self-publishes or if she tries to shop it with another publisher.